Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bell to Bell, a professional wrestling podcast. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, and we have a great show for you guys today. First and foremost, we're going to dive into the 2025 Royal Rumble, and I will decide whether or not it met the supremely high expectations that we had for this PLE going into Saturday. We'll talk about all the matches, including the men's and women's Royal Rumble matches, and whether or not the WWE got it right in choosing Charlotte Flair and Jey Uso to win in those spots. Also, we're going to have a brief discussion about LA Knight. Yeah, and whether or not he's actually lost all of the momentum that he built up through the end of 2023 and throughout what was a rather successful year in 2024. We'll close things out because we are on the road to WrestleMania after last Saturday, after Monday, after Tuesday on NXT. I will give my WrestleMania 41 match card predictions and see how close I can get to what actually happens in April at Allegiant Stadium out in sunny Las Vegas. Remember, before we keep going here, you can like, share, subscribe to my page, this channel on YouTube by searching Nick Belsky, or you can check us out on Spotify by simply searching Bell to Bell. Let's kick things off with a recap of the 2025 Royal Rumble. This is a pay-per-view that I had extremely high expectations for, and I think if you asked anybody, they had extremely high expectations for it. And with that in mind, I will say as a PLE overall, I thought they missed on a few areas, but they did have some good matches. They did have some great storytelling throughout the Rumbles, especially. And they did have some really good displays of technical wrestling and storytelling wrestling, as I like to kind of split them up as we'll talk about here. The first match, and I'm not going to get too deep into these pre-card matches, but DIY versus Motor City Machine Guns, I think the crowd did a disservice to them. I think they had a rather good match. I thought it was a good showcase. It didn't quite meet my expectations because I think they got a little bit too into the fact that they didn't have a lot of time. So it felt a little bit rushed as opposed to typical 2 out of 3 falls matches. But I think overall they delivered in a spot that they really had earned throughout the last couple of months, trying to rebuild that Smackdown tag team division. The finish is where you kind of lose me. It was the crowd reaction, which was kind of dead for that match. And it was the finish because I wasn't really a fan of the Street Profits interference. Now, I will be less upset about that if the payoff is done correctly. I mean, as of right now, and this is not going to be part of my prediction, so I guess I'll spoil a separate prediction here for Mania. It feels like they're headed towards a fatal 4-way match at WrestleMania between the Street Profits, DIY, the Motor City Machine Guns, and if he can come back healthy, a Gorillas of Destiny team of Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. We saw that little vignette or that little backstage video of Tama Tonga staring at the tag belts and DIY essentially saying, "We're going to take those. You're crazy. Get away from us." It feels like that's what we're setting up here, which could be a very, very good match for WrestleMania 41. But overall, I was left a little disappointed in this one. Glad that I predicted it right. Glad that I knew that DIY was going to retain. Not a fan of how it happened. But again, I will be okay with it if the payoff comes correct. Let's move over to the WWE Undisputed Championship between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. This is what I'll say about this match. Death, taxes, and Kevin Owens losing a world title match at the Royal Rumble are the 3 guarantees in life as of right now. But again, shout out to Kevin Owens because we knew coming into this one, it's KO in a ladder match. His body is going to go through an absolute beating because he doesn't care about his well-being at all. We saw it in this match on several occasions. I mean, the back body drop that he took onto the ladder that was set up on the side was absolutely disgusting. I'm surprised he was able to stand up after that. And then, of course, closing it all out with an Alabama slam through a ladder that was built as a bridge between the commentary desk and the ring. I mean, chef's kiss. Way to finish off what has been a very violent, brutal match that was chock full of so many crazy spots. I loved this. I thought this was a perfect culmination to a storyline that had kind of led WWE throughout the final months of the year of 2024. From Bad Blood to Royal Rumble, you put a cherry on top of that rivalry, you put a cherry on top of that feud, and Cody Rhodes gets his one statement retention of his WWE championship. I thought that was done extremely well. The violence was crazy. It's something that we don't get to see very much unless it's Kevin Owens in a ladder match. One-on-one, I enjoyed every single second of it. Now let's get to the two main events here, because I think there were two main events, and it wasn't the undisputed WWE Championship, and it certainly wasn't the World Tag Team Championships with DIY and Motor City Machine Guns. It was the Women's Royal Rumble, which led off the show, and it was the Men's Royal Rumble, which closed out the show. I thought the Women's Rumble was absolutely terrific. I thought that both Rumbles told two completely different stories. The Women's Rumble was a showcase of the future of the women's division in the WWE. Yes, you had Nikki Bella returning, which was, I think, it was a little underwhelming, the reaction for Nikki Bella, but again, a lot of people wanted different names in that 30 spot. You had the return of Alexa Bliss, which got the pop of the night, and we'll talk about here in a minute. You had the return of Charlotte Flair that was expected. But I think overall, when you look at the story of the 2025 Women's Royal Rumble, it was a story of the future. You had 5 NXT entrants. Jada Parker was a surprise. The NXT Women's Champion Julia came out and had a good showing. Stephanie Vauquer came out and had a good showing. Lash Legend, outside of the next name I'm going to say, I thought had the best performance at the Royal Rumble of the NXT stars, but Lash Legend is out there as well. And then there's Roxanne Perez, who sets a new Iron Women record for the Women's Royal Rumble match. Comes out at number 3, lasts nearly 1 hour and 8 minutes. All 5 of those entrants were very, very good. But it wasn't just that. You look at how they started it. It was Liv Morgan and Io Sky. I understand they're veterans, but those are going to be the pillars of the women's division moving forward outside of who you see right now as your champions. You get to see them go in there, start off the match, and as they did throughout the entirety of 2024, they carried the Royal Rumble match on their shoulders. So I give a shout out to Liv. I give a shout out to Io Sky. I think those two were kind of the emphasis of this Royal Rumble. The future of the women's division is those two. They were the workhorses in 2024, and they were rewarded with a very, very impressive showing in the 2025 Royal Rumble. Now, the biggest return, not just of this Rumble, but the biggest return of the night was Alexa Bliss returning at 21. Over 2 years since she left the WWE, she comes back, and no conversations asked, no questions asked, no debating. She got the biggest pop of the night. It wasn't the best performance of the night. I think there were other people, Roxanne Perez. Obviously, you have to talk about the winner, which is Charlotte Flair. An interesting Rumble appearance for Nia Jax, who was booked to look extremely strong in this one. But Alexa Bliss went 11 minutes in the Rumble, eliminated Liv Morgan, potentially setting up what could be a very, very fun WrestleMania feud. And all in all, just being one of the biggest headlines to come out of the Women's Royal Rumble. I'm excited Alexa Bliss is back. I'm intrigued to see where she shows up, because she wasn't on Monday Night Raw. She wasn't on NXT. And from everything we've heard, she's going to be part of the product moving forward. It wasn't just a one-off. So is she going to show up on Friday Night Smackdown, which kind of goes back to something I talked about last week, which is what is going on with the Wyatt Six. Now, there's a new wrinkle added into that conversation. Will Alexa Bliss be part of or be adjacent to the Wyatt Six moving forward? Should be fun to follow along with. Now, let's finish off this discussion with the winner. Charlotte Flair walks away with it. It made more sense in my eyes than every other main event challenger. Going into this and going into this year, 2025, as a whole, we all thought that, well, Charlotte's going to return because it's due time that she returns from that gruesome knee injury. And we all expected it to be Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton at WrestleMania. This was the quickest way to get there, right? Not only that, I think that duo, that matchup can sustain and can build via simple promos over the next 3 months. I think that you need to build up the matchup for Rhea Ripley, which I'll get to here in a minute, versus what you need to do for Charlotte versus Tiffany. Because Charlotte comes back, she wins the Rumble. She is going to take on the heel persona in this matchup. She's going to be a heel in this entire run since returning from injury. She kind of established that post Rumble, and it certainly went that way on Monday night when she came out to address the crowd. So she's going to be the heel. Tiffany's going to be the face. And I think those two going at it for 3 months is enough to build up for their WrestleMania match, because I think a lot of their feud is going to do its talking in the ring at Mania. I don't think it needs to be built with layers upon layers upon layers of who's going to be the challenger for Tiffany, and then it eventually coming out as Charlotte. I think Charlotte coming back, establishing that she is a dominant presence, and then establishing that she is going after Tiffany is exactly what they needed for that. I will say, though, it was slightly telegraphed. That's what kind of ruined it towards the end for me, because you look at the Final Four, it's Charlotte Flair, it's Roxanne Perez, didn't see her winning it, even though she had a very good showing. It's Nia Jax, who was a world champion for a lot of last year and had a lot of opportunities and a lot of moments last year. Didn't expect them to give her the shot at WrestleMania, and a returning Nikki Bella. I think we all knew once it got down to the Final Four, it was going to be Charlotte Flair. But at the same time, it was still a very good Royal Rumble. I've seen a lot of people complaining that, well, you could have brought this person back. Well, there could have been this surprise. They didn't rely on surprises. They relied on their young talent and the future of the industry and the future of the business and the future of the division for the women's division to get the job done on Saturday. And I thought they did a really good job with that, because it was a really good Rumble. And that's credit to the strength of the women's roster right now, because you didn't have an Asuka return. You didn't have an AJ Lee return, which everybody was expecting, or at least everybody was hoping for. And you didn't have a Becky Lynch return. And yet, it was still a great Rumble. So credit goes out to the 30 superstars that performed in that Rumble, and credit goes out to specifically the young stars of that Rumble, because I thought that really told the story. Let's talk a little bit about the men's Royal Rumble. I'm just going to start with this. That is the best Rumble that I have personally ever seen. It lived up to the billing. Whether you agree with the booking decision at the end or not, you have to admit that everything from start to finish, from bell to bell, as it was absolutely phenomenal. There were very little lulls. There were very little mistakes. There was one at the beginning and there was one at the end. But outside of that, I saw nothing that made me think anything other than I love what I'm seeing in the Royal Rumble. It started with a red hot start. Rey Mysterio and Penta being the first two out was a tremendous decision. Something I had not thought about going into this one, and maybe I should have thought about it, but it was the best 1-2 that you could have possibly put in there with the 30 participants. Just like the year prior, they put in Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso, which was the best 1 and 2 that they could have put into the Royal Rumble to start things off. So Mysterio versus Penta, not only that, but following it up with Chad Gable at number 3, considering the current storyline that he has, where he's trying to figure out how to defeat and get rid of the Lucha problem that he currently has. Having him come out at 3 was great, and then having Carmelo Hayes come out at 4, I put it out on Twitter. I said, there are 4 absolute ballers in the ring right now when it comes to wrestling, and they put on a show to start the Royal Rumble match. Fast forward a little bit to IShowSpeed. It was a perfectly executed 90 seconds. Whenever it was Akira Tozawa coming out, I was very confused, because with all the star power that you had in this Rumble match, nothing against Tozawa, he's a very strong talent, but I don't think he had been built nearly close enough to be a participant in this year's Royal Rumble. And then you see what happens with Carmelo Hayes, who is just attacking people from behind. I guess that's his shtick now. So he does it, and then they take it back to Gorilla, and Triple H sends out IShowSpeed. I think that was huge for this Rumble, because everybody was eagerly anticipating when the heavyweights were coming in, and we'll get to that. But you needed something to help prevent a lull in the middle of a match with this much star power in it. And I thought that was executed perfectly well. He comes in, not only does he go in, he eliminates Otis alongside Braun Breaker and then takes the spear of an absolute lifetime. I loved every second of it. Again, perfectly executed 90 seconds by IShowSpeed in the WWE. And then you get to the run from 16 to 26. Absolute, to steal from Sheamus, banger after banger after banger after banger. 16 was Roman Reigns. And whenever he came into the ring, you could sense there was a shift in what we were about to witness. After Reigns, it was Drew McIntyre. Then it was Finn Balor returning for the first time since this street fight. Then it was Shinsuke Nakamura. Then it was main event Jey Uso at 20. Then the return of AJ Styles. Shout out to the original gimmick, the original music, the original appearance. I love everything about that. He is my favorite wrestler, and I was very happy about that. Then it was Braun Strowman. Then it was John Cena. Then it was CM Punk. Then it was Seth Rollins. And then it was Dominic Mysterio, who is the perfect name to put at the end of that murderer's row of entrants for the Royal Rumble. Of those 11 entrants, there were 8 world championships. And when we said coming into this Royal Rumble, sorry, not 8 world championships, but 8 world champions, many more championships, especially considering John Cena was in that mix. But whenever you looked at this Rumble, that's what everybody was excited for. That's what everybody was ecstatic about, and that is exactly what they got. They told stories in such a good way. Having Reigns come out and be dominant to start it off, having McIntyre immediately follow him because he's right behind Roman Reigns because he's going after Roman Reigns is a nice little tip to storytelling there. Having Balor, Nakamura, Uso, Styles as a group of 4 was great. Braun Strowman thrown in there, again, good, world champ. Not really a fan of him continuing his program with Jacob Fatu. Not really a fan of him coming out just 7 days after he was seemingly destroyed by Jacob Fatu on Saturday night's main event, but still added to this run from 16 to 26. And then it whittled down to 4. Cena, Jey Uso, Logan Paul, and I guess that would have ended up being who was 4th. I don't remember. I think it was Punk, I believe. And then he was eliminated by Logan Paul because he had that crazy Reigns, Punk, and Rollins spot that is setting things up that we'll talk about in a minute. But then it comes down to those final 4, mainly the final 3 of Logan Paul, Jey Uso, and John Cena. I thought, again, a little telegraphed because I knew they weren't going to give it to Logan Paul. I was hoping they weren't going to give it to John Cena. Going to be completely honest here. I did not want to see John Cena, after setting up a desperation storyline in his first appearance of 2025, just go out there and win the Rumble 4 weeks later. So I didn't want to see John Cena. So I thought maybe they are just going to give it to Jey Uso. And lo and behold, that's exactly what they did, which begs the question. Did WWE make the right choice selecting Jey Uso? A lot of people are giving their opinions and weighing in on what they believe is the correct call here. Was it the correct call to give it to main event Jey Uso? I'll say this. True surprise booking, which doesn't happen very often in current day professional wrestling. I didn't see it coming, and I'd venture to guess that there's probably only 3% to 5% of the people that were watching that show that actually believed at the outset when Rey Mysterio's music hit that it was going to end with Jey Uso standing tall. I mean, whenever it was billed as the best, most stacked Royal Rumble ever, they said it so many times, including on that Royal Rumble pre-show, the Royal Rumble, whatever tailgate that they had on Friday. They kept saying, this is the best Royal Rumble ever. If we heard that so many times, we should have known a non-favorite was going to walk away with the winner. The amount of times that they continued to speak loudly of, this is the best you're going to get, this is the best Royal Rumble ever. We should have known, but we all missed it. And it goes to Jey Uso. I mentioned it was an interesting reaction online. Loaded roster, a lot of people deserving of that spot that we talked about last week, that it was hard to predict because, well, there were so many favorites. It could have gone to John Cena. I didn't want to see it, but it could have. They could have just given it to John Cena, done the lazy booking, and said he won the Rumble. He's going to go to Mania and try to get that record-breaking title reign. Could have gone to CM Punk. That's who I predicted. could have gone to Roman Reigns. He is the most dominant force in WWE. Would anybody have been surprised that they put him back in that spot? No. Could have gone to Drew McIntyre. Less likely, but also could have gone to Sami Zayn. We talked about that last week. If Kevin Owens does win, and they are seemingly looking at Owens versus Zayn, how much better is that feud whenever it's for a world title? Does it need it? Not necessarily, but you could see it in the cards as a possibility. They end up going with Jey, and I think it's well-deserved. I think it is. Not only because he organically earned that spot, right? He organically became the most overact in wrestling, period, right now, with the Yeet and Yeet Mania, and the Yeet movement is what they're starting to call it. He earned it with the fans, and he earned it with the organization too. He earned it with the company. He's been working for, 15 to 20 years as a workhorse, as a guy that hasn't really gotten injured all that much, as a guy that has been available, as a guy that has told great stories, in particular for the last half decade as part of the Bloodline story, and even separating from the Bloodline over the past year, has been telling very good stories. He's also just become the underdog that gets close but can't quite get over the hump. We saw it on Saturday night's main event against Gunther. We saw it last year whenever he did get over the hump, won the Intercontinental title, and then the family drama kind of pulled him back and cost him his first singles championship. So I think that it's well-deserved for Jey Uso. I think that going forward, you can do a lot of interesting things. I think the reason a lot of people were upset is they had already fantasy booked WrestleMania 41 before we even got onto the road to WrestleMania, and that set them up for disappointment when Jey Uso knocked off John Cena. There's two intriguing matchups going forward. He said it could be him versus Cody, best friends turned Mania opponents. I don't like that nearly as much as what they set up on Monday night between Jey Uso and Gunther, where Gunther said, "You're not on my level," essentially repeating everything that had been said about Jey Uso from Saturday night when he won until Monday night when Gunther walked out there. He was paying attention. He knew. He said, beating you does nothing for me at WrestleMania, does nothing for my legacy. Beating John Cena, beating CM Punk, beating Roman Reigns, that would advance my legacy, not beating Jey Uso for a second time in this title reign. So I kind of like that setup, especially since Gunther's kind of threatening bodily harm on Jey Uso for every single week between now and April. So I think that you have two interesting ways to go. And what we learned last year was sometimes it's best to just sit back, wait, and see what's going to happen. Because last year, after the Rumble, there was the weird Cody Rhodes getting taken over by The Rock situation, and they ended up turning it into one of the best two-night WrestleMania stories that we have witnessed. So I'm just going to sit back and enjoy and congratulate main event Jey Uso on a crazy, crazy win at, in my opinion, the best Royal Rumble that we have seen, or at least that I have seen ever. Now let's talk about LA Knight really quickly. It feels to me, and it culminated at the Royal Rumble where he was the 29th entrant. He was able to eliminate one person, which was Damian Priest, and then he was eliminated by AJ Styles. It feels like WWE has officially missed the boat on LA Knight. It feels like something needs to happen for LA Knight to get back to that position that he was in through a lot of the late 2023 and early 2024, because it feels like at this point, he's just lost all of his momentum. He was the fan favorite for a long time. He was insanely over. Whenever you would hear his music hit, everybody would freak out, similar to what you're seeing with Jey Uso right now, right? LA Knight was that guy and now has been supplanted by Jey Uso. And I think that's because of a couple of reasons. For one, whenever he started to get that momentum, it took way too long to build him to being a United States champion. And then once he got the title, I think the WWE overcorrected in response to what everybody thought about Logan Paul's U.S. title reign, and it affected LA Knight. Logan Paul was this United States champion who took it off of the Hall of Famer Rey Mysterio and then never defended it. He defended it on the Royal Rumble. He defended it at Mania, and I think that might have been it. The third time he went to defend it was not until SummerSlam when he went up against LA Knight. Now, Knight won that one. It was a great match. I liked it. I think it was a lot to do with the fact that it was in Cleveland, and I think Logan Paul showed out in a big way, and then LA Knight going over. Everybody was excited. They finally gave him gold. After that, the reign started slow. Like I said, they overcorrected. Logan never defended the belt. LA Knight always defended the belt. They were trying to make it a workman's title once again, and it just didn't hit. They needed to have actual feuds, actual stories, not just Santos Escobar's coming out for a title match. The next week, oh, well, I already beat Santos. How about I just beat up Berto for the United States title match? How about we just give out title matches without anybody earning it or anybody even really getting into a feud or getting on LA Knight's nerves to earn that title match? So I thought that was kind of part of it as well. And then the worst part of it all was he finally started to gain momentum. They tapped into what everybody was excited about, which was the Carmelo Hayes versus Andrade best of 7 series. And then all of a sudden made those two look at LA Knight and want to go after the US title. His retention in that triple threat match to me was whenever I started paying attention to LA Knight's US title reign and enjoying LA Knight's US title reign. And then right after that, he drops the title to Shinsuke Nakamura. Quickly, I might add. Nakamura comes back. I believe he had one match where he won, and then he wins the United States title at Survivor Series. I didn't like that. And because of that, and the reaction to it, because he's kind of fallen and faded into the back a little bit since losing the title, he felt out of place at the Royal Rumble. He was in that final 10 with so much star power. He comes out at 29, and whether the crowd just didn't have anything left after what they witnessed the previous 13 entrants, or whether it's actually the fact that he's lost momentum, he just felt out of place. Yeah, there's a lot of star power that was in that ring. AJ, Cena, Punk, Rollins, McIntyre, Reigns, even Logan Paul felt like he belonged in that ring more so than LA Knight at the time. So I feel like they've missed the boat. I feel like he's lost a lot of momentum, and I feel like they need to do something to kind of turn the ship around, because this is a guy who has been working his butt off to get over. He worked for years to get over. When he did, they didn't give him anything, or at the very least, they didn't give him much, right? He had a WrestleMania match against AJ Styles last year, one-on-one, and he went over. He had a one-on-one match for the US title at SummerSlam, and he went over. And then look at the last two Big Four. He lost the title to Nakamura, who just returned and hasn't done very much with the title since then. And then he entered at 29 and kind of had a ho-hum performance in the Royal Rumble. So they need to do something with him. And the question then comes up, because that's the time of year it is, where does he fit on this year's WrestleMania card? I don't know. A year after having a singles feud with AJ Styles, I'm not sure where he fits on the WrestleMania 41 card. Does he go after Shinsuke Nakamura and try to get the US title back? Maybe, but that doesn't really entice me as a one-on-one feud. Does that become a multi-man ladder match that includes guys like Carmelo, guys like Andrade? I feel like that would be great for them. But again, that feels like a step back for LA Knight. And that's just my overarching sense right now with this guy. It just feels like he's taken steps back. Now, like I mentioned, his only elimination was Damian Priest. And then he was eliminated by AJ Styles, who then moved to Raw. So there's not really much that was set up in the Rumble. So questions need to be answered. I ended the last segment saying, well, I'll sit back and I'll witness and I'll watch and wait to see what WWE comes up with. But whenever you're putting the pieces together, which we'll do here in a minute, there's just no room for a guy like LA Knight. Shoot, there's no room for a guy like Drew McIntyre. So there's certainly not going to be any for LA Knight. So I'm not sure what the answer is or how to regain this momentum, but I do know that he has certainly lost the momentum that he gained through all of 2023 and through the early portion of 2024. Let's close out this episode talking about my Mania match card predictions. We are officially on the road to WrestleMania. The sign's going to be there at every single show. Every single storyline is going to be building up to April 19th and 20th in Las Vegas, Nevada. So really quickly to close out this one, I'm going to put it on record where we sit right now, Wednesday, February 5th. These are my predictions for the matchups we're going to see at WrestleMania 41. The World Heavyweight Championship, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think it's going to be Jey Uso versus Gunther. They're playing the storyline where Jey wants to talk to Cody, see if maybe he should go after that title, but it's going to be Jey versus Gunther. Jey won the Royal Rumble, and this is the only sensible way for him to go. It's a rematch of Saturday night's main event, which a lot of people are not happy with, but that crowd in San Antonio was bought into that match. And I think that is what confirmed to WWE that the rematch happening at WrestleMania with Jey being the Rumble winner is something worth booking. And I think that's exactly why, maybe not why they chose to go with Jey Uso. I think they probably had that in mind before the Saturday before the Rumble, but I think that was confirmation to them that this is definitely the route that we want to take, even though there was no way Jey was winning that one at Saturday night's main event. So they're going to look to replicate that in Vegas. I think they can. Do I know who's going to win? No, I'd like to see how this storyline plays out first, but I do think it's going to be Jey Uso versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship, which leaves the WWE Champion Cody Rhodes in an interesting spot. The Elimination Chamber is about 3.5 weeks away as of right now. The two people that are in it, John Cena, who declared himself after the Rumble in a phenomenal press conference moment, and CM Punk, who took out Sami Zayn in a very good main event match on Monday Night Raw on Netflix. I think it's going to be CM Punk. I think it's going to be. Many, myself included, thought Punk was already going to win the Rumble and that's who he was going to choose. Now, a lot of people believe it's going to be a triple threat between CM Punk, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns. One, that seems too obvious. That seems to be too telegraphed considering the moment that we saw at the Royal Rumble. Punk eliminated both Rollins and Reigns, and Rollins went after Reigns first before remembering, oh yeah, I hate this guy too, and he just eliminated me from the Royal Rumble. I should probably get into it with him. It just feels like there is a lot more animosity and a lot more story to tell between Rollins and Reigns in a singles match, and a lot more to tell between Punk and Rhodes in a Mania main event. And I know what you're saying. That means John Cena doesn't main event his final WrestleMania ever. But is that the worst thing in the world? I know that everybody wants to see it. Everybody thinks that that's apropos, that's poetry, that's cinema, as people like to say. But sometimes the best stories are the ones that are drawn out. He started a desperation storyline. Desperation. Not just, hey, maybe I can win this. It was desperate. It was, hey, I have to do this now. And then it kind of advanced at Royal Rumble when he got eliminated in the final two, and he came out and he said, what's best for business is me winning title number 17 and main eventing WrestleMania. I think that desperation, the longer you let it grow, the better it's going to be whenever Cena inevitably comes away with his 17th championship. And I think because of that, it's not going to happen at WrestleMania. I think Rhodes versus Punk is the best matchup that we can get now, and I think that's the matchup we're going to see, which leaves Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns to do their thing. I absolutely love this. If The Rock was not going to be at WrestleMania 41, this is the best matchup they could have made. Rollins and Reigns have shown little tidbits of this story throughout the last decade plus. We saw it in the Rumble whenever it was Cena and Punk and Reigns, and then Burn It Down played, and Roman's face just dropped. I love this storyline. I think both of these guys are in the perfect spot now to explore this storyline. And with the Roman Reigns injury angle, it feels like he's going to return to cost specifically Seth Rollins, whether that is at his qualifying match, which I think is less likely, more so at the Elimination Chamber in Toronto, especially considering they're saying he's out indefinitely. I think they let Rollins get to the chamber, and then I think they have Roman Reigns coming back to cost him and set up a beautiful 2-month arc with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Let's go to the Women's World Championship, where I believe it's going to be Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky. Anybody that watched Monday Night Raw saw the cracks, saw the story start to form between these two. I don't know how they're going to do it because Rhea cost Io an opportunity at the Elimination Chamber, which is hypothetically the last chance that somebody has to go after her world title. But the fact is, both of them challenged for the same title last month. Io fell short at Saturday night's main event, part 1, and Rhea got the job done on the premiere episode of Monday Night Raw. Rio costing Io that match Monday and seeing the cracks starting to form in their friendship, I think somebody's getting taken out of their qualifying match, and I think Io Sky is going to be the one to replace them. They just turned Rhea Ripley face, right? She's a baby face now. They just did this at SummerSlam last year. Io Sky is going to bounce back the other way. She's going to take someone out. She's going to take their place because Adam Pearce is going to say, well, you were robbed of your opportunity, so go out there and try to earn another one. So I think Io Sky is going to take someone out, replace them in a qualifying match, make it to the chamber, and she's going to take on Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, which leaves, of course, Charlotte Flair to take on Tiffany Stratton. Again, we know this is coming. This is the match that most have looked at all, the last couple of months when thinking about, well, Charlotte's going to return. Who's she going to face? It's clear it's going to be Tiffany Stratton, who held on to that Money in the Bank contract for a long time and eventually cashed it in, which kind of solidified these plans to everybody on the outside, saying, okay, if Tiffany has the belt, the only logical option is for Charlotte to take her on at WrestleMania. Charlotte won the Royal Rumble, and it feels like this champion tour that she's on, starting with Rhea on Monday, then going to Julia yesterday on NXT, and now, of course, going to close it out with Tiffany on Friday. I think that's when she's going to say, you know what? I think I want to take it away from Tiffany Stratton. So I have Tiffany Stratton versus Charlotte Flair for the WWE Women's Championship and Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky for the Women's World Championship. There's two more matches I want to try to predict here. One is pretty obvious. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. We saw the beginning of that story at the Royal Rumble. I guess you could say we saw the beginning of that story a few Mondays back when Kevin gave Sami the opportunity to interfere in his match, and he said, in turn, I'll help you win the Royal Rumble. Well, that didn't happen. And now we're going to see Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 2 years after they main evented together, winning tag gold in WrestleMania 31. I think this is going to be phenomenal. It kicked off Monday when Owens hit that nasty package pile driver on Zayn, and I think this is 100% the free space on the bingo card now. You can write this in pen. It's going to be Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, and they don't need a belt because this is going to be a blood feud. The one name I haven't mentioned in these predictions, well, I haven't mentioned a couple, but the big name I haven't mentioned is John Cena. So who does John Cena face in his final WrestleMania? There's a lot of options. He could go after Braun Breaker for his first Intercontinental Championship. That's an option. Mr. Grand Slam John Cena. That's an option. He could go after Logan Paul, who he eliminated in the Rumble and could eliminate Cena in the Chamber, setting up this feud going into WrestleMania. I could see that happening. The one that I want to see the most, though, not sure how we get there, but the one I want to see the most, and because this booking as of right now for John Cena is so up in the air, the one I want to see the most is Randy Orton. They had a great feud, but they never had a proper one-on-one WrestleMania match. I think that's the direction that they're most likely to go in. And since I'm doing these predictions, I'm going to say it's going to be John Cena versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania 41. John Cena's final match at a WrestleMania in his WWE career. Again, a lot of interesting stories and interesting paths that this could go. Shoot, he could win the Elimination Chamber, and it's Cena versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. A lot of people would rather see that than Rhodes versus Punk, but I just feels like the time is right for CM Punk to main event to WrestleMania, and it feels like John Cena doesn't need to be in that spotlight and doesn't need to get the belt this early in his retirement tour. So I'm going to say it's John Cena versus Randy Orton, Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky, Tiffany Stratton versus Charlotte Flair, Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns in a one-on-one match, which is much better than a triple threat with CM Punk. He is going to go on to take on Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship, and Jey Uso versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. Hope you guys agree with it. Let me know in the comment section, what do you expect the WrestleMania 41 match card to look like as of right now? But that's going to do it for this episode of Bell to Bell. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube by searching Nick Belsky. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Or you can check us out on Spotify at Bell to Bell. That's it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.